And we got your verdict for the most part yesterday. But now thinking back on it here as we go into training camp, we'll do some winners, we'll do some losers, we'll do some risers. Who had a great camp. We'll talk about some of those guys on today's Football Friday edition, just to give people an idea of kind of who stuck out at training camp for all the beat guys. I think it was overall a pretty good, solid camp, John. We got some good work in against a good team in the Patriots. And, it's the install of a new offense. So there was the ebbs and flows that come with that, I think were present as well.
Yeah, I think it was a quiet camp is the way I would describe it. No controversies, no up, and that was the Eagles' goal coming in with the Jalen Carter extension. They wanted to be all about football. And, people talk about the offense and the offense struggling and the passing game struggling, and that's real, but that's normal football stuff. Nothing outside that purview, which is always good. It's been completely focused on football. So I think that is number one. And number two, they got out of it pretty healthy. I mean, Jonathan Grenard obviously got hurt lifting before it even started. And you had your bumps and bruises along the way, but I mentioned that yesterday, and the final training camp practice report was like the smallest since day 2 or day 3.
Wow.
Markel Bell, Jacorian Bennett, Grant Calcaterra, Eli Stowers, Cole Wisniewski, Jonathan Jones was limited. But those first 5 are the only ones who did not participate. Now, Willie Lampkin seems to be having trouble with that stinger. So, keep an eye on that.
Yeah, those are tough injuries, those stingers. Yeah. I mean, because they can linger, and obviously the neck and the back are tough. So
I don't think he would have been playing. Yeah, I guess he would have. He would have started. So they might be cautious. That'll be a name to look at. He would have started at right guard or center, depending on which way they want to go. But so he might. That's just a hunch. They might sit him down. And if he's really having troubles, he might be one of those 2 guys they could put on IR to start the season, miss about a month, and that enables you to keep another body on the offensive line. So, it's getting tougher as we get to the deadline to figure out what the Eagles are going to do. Starting at quarterback, it's just I don't nothing they've done this summer makes sense at backup quarterback.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. John, how do you feel as though the install went in terms of in conclusion now? Now it's never over. Obviously, it's an ongoing process. I'm not trying to say that, but there is obviously a pressurized part of camp when you're installing a new offense. So I've got to get this installed so that we can get to the real work and kind of grind to be ready to go for the season. How do you think the install went from your eye and from what you could tell?
Went a little bit longer than normal. Usually about 10 or 11 practices. And you have the offense installed. Took a little bit longer. And as you said, it's continuing as they go through. Just a bunch of new stuff that they haven't typically done. So I think it's more about repetition than anything. Once you get into the different mechanics of it, branding, I've called it, whatever, everything's the same after that. But you got to get in. And the terminology is probably the biggest part of all. Guys, if you're playing slow because you're trying to figure out the terminology, I've never understood that. I've tried, try to simplify it as much as possible, but coaches aren't listening to me. That could be an issue. But yeah, it's hard to evaluate because DeVonta missed so much time and Mitch missed so much time. It's hard to evaluate other than, Dontavian Wicks is your one, and Hollywood Brown is your 2 and Elijah Moore or Darius Cooper is your 3 is probably not good enough. You can say that, but I mean that I think everybody would understand that. And that's what they did for a large portion of camp. That's what they were working with. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It helps those players. Silver lining. Darius Cooper had a good summer, slowed down a little bit at the end, but had a good summer. Elijah Moore had a good camp. Hollywood came on at the end. Maybe the difference between a younger player and a veteran player, the veteran's kind of savvy and waiting.
Yeah, right.
And he's played a lot better.
Younger
recently.
player starts hot and tapers off. That's not as good of a look.
So silver lining for those guys to get more reps with Jalen Hurts, but they need obviously DeVonta out there, but they also need Mekhi, and you see the urgency they are trying to get him ready for week 1. Legitimate urgency, which tells you a lot about the guys behind him as well.
Yep, good stuff. All right, Johnny Mac, good opening there on the training camp verdict. You got the game tonight, obviously, so we'll see kind of how that goes tonight. I'm excited to see Cole Payton and obviously Mekhi Lemon if Mekhi Lemon is out there. You think Eli Stowers will play too? Probably, right?
No, he's out. He's hurt.
Oh, right. He went down this week. Was that a phantom injury? Put him on IR.
Well, it's a hamstring. I mean, he is wearing a big compression sleeve on his right leg. Not that you can't. I like compression sleeves myself. So, not that you can't, but I'll say this about Eli Stowers. He's not going to be active week 1. So he's either going to be on short-term injured reserve or an inactive player to start the season. Just not ready to contribute.
All right, John, good stuff. Let's do a little camp talk on the recap. All right, we'll call them the camp awards, but don't worry, John. I didn't make them too egregious for you. I won't make you suffer too much today.
I usually do camp awards, but it was swiped away from me. I have more interesting camp awards, and
Oh, I'd like to hear some of yours too. So I got a couple here.
I didn't do them this year, but
I know. But if you have ideas for camp awards, we can do them on the show today. I have the 2 camp MVPs, defense and offense. All right. The breakout player who didn't exist. I wrote didn't exist in July. That's not exactly what I meant. You know what I mean in terms of maybe didn't think they were going to make the roster. Now probably do. Best single play of camp, if you can come up with one. The moment of camp. I think I have one that's clear in my head. I'm sure yours might be the same. Worst moment of camp. The disappointment of camp and the unresolved of camp. So those are the things I wrote down. We'll get you to start here. Camp MVP, John. Defense. Start on the defense. Who you got?
Jalyx Hunt. He's the MVP. I hate, he ended poorly on day 17, lined up against Lane Johnson, but overall, I think he was the most consistent difference maker on either side of the football, which was, pretty exciting. I would say it was. He looks ready to be a starting level edge defender in this league, and maybe even more than that, maybe even a difference-making edge defender in this league. So to me, that's a pretty clear win for Jack. A lot of good players. Like, I think we did best player, and I'm like, I don't like best player because best player is best player. It's like, it's going to be Quinion, it's going to be Cooper, it's going to be Lane. But who had the best camp? I would say that would be Jalyx Hunt.
So defensive camp MVP is going to Jalyx Hunt. John, if you had an honorable mention, who would it be?
How about that Moro Ajomo?
I like it. All right.
He's also
on my list. I had Jalyx, and my honorable mention was Ajomo and Mitchell. So we're on the same page there. All right, camp MVP, John. Offense. This one's a little tougher, I think.
That is tougher. I'm going to go Can I go health of the offensive line? I can't. So I'm going to go.
That's a little bit riding the fence.
I'm going to go Saquon Barkley.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, he was the only difference maker amongst the skill position people, with DeVonta not out there for a large portion. So if I can't go esoteric and say health of the offense, I got to go Saquon. I don't think anybody else is even close.
Let me get who would be an honorable mention for you. I'll give you what my two names are after this.
Honorable mention, I'd go
health of the offense.
I'd like to go health. I can't get everybody's looking for skill people. So I'm like,
there's a name here I thought for sure would be your honorable mention.
Really?
Yeah.
I would go, because there's not much. Dontavian Wicks, I would go, I guess.
All right, that's who. I put Dontavian Wicks as the MVP of the offense just because I feel as though he locked in the wide receiver too. And coming into camp, I don't know if they thought he was going to be the wide receiver too. I mean, you did, but did the Eagles think it could have been Mekhi Lemons? Was it going to be a battle? Well, Dontavian Wicks is now locked in at the wide receiver too. And then my honorable mention actually was Markel Bell. I thought he had a nice summer and a nice offseason for a rookie third rounder and showed some promise for the future. Nothing crazy yet, nothing overwhelming yet, but I thought Markel Bell had a nice camp from what I saw. Nice preseason game.
Well, he would, if I'm adding, I would some of the things I've done in the past. Our best rookie, most disappointing. He would be best rookie, no doubts. But he didn't get enough first team reps to be in the conversation to be even honorable mention. But he did, I would say was best rookie by a pretty wide margin.
All right, good stuff there. John, breakout player who didn't exist in July. I don't really love that phrasing. I didn't have anything else. Breakout player.
I don't know what that means, but breakout player, I think, is Tyler Steen. I think Tyler Steen is the most underrated player on this team. I think he's going to be a star right guard in this league. I think he's going to get a lot of money, and it might be in Philadelphia.
If Landon's done and Lane are done, maybe you see Tyler Steen get paid.
Yeah. I think he's just really good, and you could see it in him. He's just more confident. He's more self-assured. He knows he can play now.
I like that he's a feisty ass dude. I think you need that on the offensive line. I like that.
Yeah,
I mean, he got in some battles, didn't he? Didn't he battle it out with?
Yeah, him and Ty Robinson.
Oh no, Robinson. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I think Tyler Steen is the most underrated player on the team.
Love it. Tyler Steen, all right, is that guy. When I meant didn't exist, I didn't mean obviously didn't exist. I more meant like guys who are on the outside looking in. Like I thought.
Well, that's Carson another one.
Steele,
my best
Willie
player,
Lampkin, somebody like that.
Well, my best player who has no chance of making the team, which we already did, is Jose Ramirez.
The edge rusher.
Yeah. He's just a really good player, but he's doesn't have the size where teams will look at him. Very similar to, we talk about Vic doing the forward for Dama's book on Sam Mills, and Sam Mills' story, couldn't get a chance, couldn't get an opportunity, but he could play, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So he needs that one opportunity, whether it's because he goes on to a bad team or injuries, which you never hope for, but it is an opportunity for other guys to take advantage. He can play. I don't know how he gets that opportunity, but he can play. So there's an extra award for you. Best player who's got no chance to make the team.
Nice. That's a very Johnny Mac award. All right, this one might be tough. Best single play of camp. Any play, John, stick out like, damn, that was a nice play.
Boy, I got to think about that. It's usually a great catch like Jalen Reagor. back in
Yeah,
the
that's
day.
exactly. It's funny you said that because that's exactly what I thought of when I
And I'm
wrote it down.
trying to think of the best catch.
I was doing some research, John, reading around at your beat reporter. I will say a lot of writing about the couple plays in Foxborough, and you weren't in
Yeah, I
Foxborough,
wasn't
so I don't want
there.
to hold that against you. Yeah, I think Woolen had like a 99-yard pick six.
Yeah,
In
well, there. I
Foxborough.
mean, best play there. There it is. The pick six at Lincoln Financial Field. That's that. You know, that was a bigger one in Foxborough, but I wasn't there. But so for the ones, so I saw 15 of the 17 practices. Are the ones I would say competitive scrimmage like environments, offense versus defense, offense driving for the win. He picks it off, pick six going the other way. There you go. I was thinking offense, but I'm glad you jogged my memory.
There you go. All right, good stuff there on the single play. John, this is different than a play. I have one that's clearly in mind for me. Moment of camp.
Oh, Morrow and Fred going at it.
Okay, all right, I like that. That wasn't mine.
Not even close. That was awesome. I mean, that was
Morrow and Fred going at it is the moment of camp. I put Lane Johnson saying probably going to be done just because I felt like it was
well in a more
deal.
serious mode. Yeah, Lane
Yeah.
is bigger, but the actual moment, Morrow and Fred. Morrow was
How close to that were you?
right there. I mean, right there. Heard every
expletive. Yeah.
20, 30 yards away. And Morrow was seeing red. Yeah, those guys were upset at each other.
Has there been any does it look like there's any leftover animosity from that, or is it two dudes?
No, they both talked about it. I mean, after the practice, Nick talked to both of them. Howie talked to both of them. In a lot of ways, I blame the coaching staff because we all saw it coming because we were so close. They were on the field closest to us. And you could see it was boiling the play before. They started shoving and cursing and, sort of an old school football mentality. They lined them up against each other again, and it just went crazy because Fred kind of locked him up and turned him around and pancaked him and threw his body weight on him. And it was on. So I kind of blame the coaching staff, to be honest. They should have got them away from each other. But it was definitely the moment of camp. I'm confident in saying that.
Yeah, it sounds like it was an exciting thing to witness there, that close and personal. That's good. All right, John, so that's the moment of camp. What about the worst moment of camp?
Ooh, worst moment of camp. There's no real injuries.
I guess if you included the game, we could say Jaquinda Jackson, who went down and was stretchered off. But
yeah, not a meaningful part of the team. You hate to be, but that's the unfeeling nature of football. For the most part, everything's been pretty good, as good as it could possibly be health wise. I would say, the stupid posting of the Quinyon Mitchell interception. And
which was a great play by Quinyon, man.
Yeah, it was great.
That's all I saw it as.
And people lose their mind. How about that?
Why are people so sensitive to this?
I
love when you say it. You're like, guys, Jalen Hurts is a big boy. I promise he can handle it. Like, it's like, I don't get that. I don't really get that part of it. It's like, all right, he threw a pick in training camp to Quinyon Mitchell, who was an all-pro cornerback last year.
I mean, it was viral. It had millions of views.
It had almost 20 million views, J-Mac.
National shows talking about it. I mean, that's more of an impact. It's not like, when you say worst moment of camp, it almost has to be an injury, and they haven't suffered a serious injury to a key contributor at camp. So, you got to go in a different direction because nothing really matters. I mean, at the end of it, it's not a big deal. Nothing's a big deal. You throw an interception. You go to the next play.
Right.
Try to get better. Drop, you go to the next play. Not that big of a deal. So it's hard to have a worse moment because unless it's injury related.
In the chat here, Gary puts getting cooked by AJ was the worst moment
All right.
of camp.
Yeah. I mean,
and Riz says Lemon not playing was the worst moment of camp. I think that's fair.
That's more than a moment.
Yeah, that's
quite a few moments.
Yeah. All right, the disappointment, John. The disappointment of camp. I might have just led you down that road right before I said it.
Well, I'll combine the first two picks, Lemon and Stowers, just not being impactful at all through their first camp. Doesn't mean they're not going to be impactful down the road, but we're just talking about 17 practices here, and they were not impactful, either of them.
Would you say not only were they not impactful, but in some ways they were the opposite? Maybe more so for Eli than Mekhi, because Mekhi wasn't out there. I mean, it almost felt to me, and I didn't see as much, but
when Mekhi
Stowers doesn't look ready to play in the NFL, from what I saw, and I didn't see all that much. I didn't watch everything.
Well, I would agree that Mekhi's ahead of Stowers from that lone perspective, but when he was out there, he did not produce at all, basically, with the one outside the one touchdown on Lincoln Financial Field, which was they lined him up in the backfield and got completely lost. It wasn't his physical traits making a play. And if you want to give that a check mark, give it to Sean Mannion. That's a positive for Sean Mannion. He figured out a way to get him lost, and it turned into a touchdown. He has not shown much with his physical ability. What we were told he has as a football player, he has not shown to this point. Granted, small sample size, but it is 5 or whatever it was, 5 or 6 practices. He did not show much in those practices. But he is ahead of Stowers, but I would put them both together because they both did not play well in their first training camp.
Tough for the first two rookies, and I think, John, part of it is how good the Eagles have been in the draft. So I think we got a little spoiled, or we got a little used to seeing great players. I mean, if you think about it, DeVonta Smith showed up and was immediately the best receiver on the football team. Jalen Carter showed up, and I think he was still behind at the time. Who was Fletcher still here, or somebody was still here that was in front of Carter? I believe it might have been Fletcher, but Carter shows up, and you're like, yeah, this guy can wreck an NFL game already. Quinion and Cooper show up, and they're making plays, the entire year through the Super Bowl. Now you got Eli and Mekhi, and it's a little bit of a letdown compared to what they were or what the Eagles have been in the draft. So I think that's kind of added to it as well,
Yeah, maybe it's a regression to that mean we've been talking about. That couldn't continue, but you would hope it would be better than it has been. Even if you didn't use those expectations, you would hope it would be better than it has been, or both. And not the end of the world, but we're only talking about training camp, and hasn't been great.
Fair enough. All right, Johnny Mac. And then the last one I have is I wrote the unresolved. All right. What's still looming? I think there's 2 options for this one.
What's still looming? Well, one I talked about at the start of the show, backup quarterback. And I guess if you want to go off of that, Sean Mannion, where's he coaching from? Are they going to hold him hostage in the box? Or are they going to let him be on the field?
I put Grenard.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Grenard. I mean, to me, it's just, all right, can you get him healthy? I mean, if you're talking about the health part of it, I can't judge. They obviously haven't given us the full information. B, I'm not a doctor, so when he's healthy, he'll be fine, but got to get him healthy. So That's every injury. So it doesn't differ. I don't worry about him as a player.
Yeah, the quarterback 2-1 is definitely a thing as well. So we'll see what that looks like tonight. All right, John, what were some of the awards that you normally do? Let's add it to the list here. If you can remember them off the top of your head, maybe you won't. That's fine too. But you said you do some.
Well, I some of the ones I gave you one, which was best player who's not going to make the team. There's no chance to make the team. Most improved player, which we kind of did with Tyler Steen, or breakout, if you want to call it that. Best rookie, which we talked about, would be Markel Bell. Biggest disappointment as a rookie that we've kind of talked about. Could give it to either, but I would say Stowers has the advantage. Biggest disappointment overall is one I would typically do, and I'm trying to think who that might be.
Still feels like it's one of those two guys, honestly.
Yeah, I don't like to go rookies, biggest disappointment. So I guess I would say biggest disappointment among the veterans. And I would say for most of camp, but he got a little bit better at the end. I talked about him before. It was Hollywood Brown, because I don't think he had a good camp. And last couple of days he did well. So he's turning it, but I would say overall it wasn't great for him. And obviously he's going to be a part of this roster. And then best undrafted rookie, which is not been the best year for the undrafted guys as far as making splashes. I think a lot of people were excited about Daquan Wright, who, and if you're still excited about him, you can go watch LSU, because he's back there in college, in the weird world of college, where you can do that now. So it comes down to really three players: Kapina Gushikin, Max Pulley, the safety, Deontay Lawson, the linebacker. A lot of people liked him because they recognized the name from Alabama. And you can even throw Rocco Underwood in there, or even Josh Weir. He counts. He was undrafted. But my overall pick, and Zion Wilson as well, but he came in late. I would go Max Pulley from Wofford.
Maximus Pulley is an all-time name too. Maximus.
I think he was the most consistent from start to finish. Most consistent from day 1 to day 17, I would say Max Pulley. Lawson came on late when Chance Campbell went down a little bit, and he missed a little bit of time. Then I had some more esoteric ones. I'm looking at the last year's. I don't like that one. Biggest flameouts. Who started well and who flamed down. I told you the opposite, which was Hollywood Brown. I haven't thought about it, but I'm trying to think about it. Who played well and then just kind of a little bit Darius Cooper.
Yeah, I felt like the only obvious one, because he was really the one name that played real well early. Like everybody was right. Oh, another great day for Cooper,
Yeah, and it all came, and maybe his Nick got a question about him, said it's early. And then I
think Cooper listened to that, man, and then he lost his mojo.
Maybe. Best late pickup, guy who didn't start with the roster, and they picked up, and I mentioned some of the late guys who just showed up. And I'm trying to think who was the best player. I don't have an obvious one. Nick Yates a couple years ago was that guy who made the team, obviously, as a backup. Started on the practice squad. They really haven't had one. I guess I'd have to go Zion Wilson. Got here a little bit late. And it's looked okay, serviceable. Anybody I'm missing? I don't think so. So hasn't been very impactful. And then the annual Mr. whatever you want to call it. A lot of people say Lehigh, Mr. Lehigh. A lot of people will say Mr. NovaCare. Now it's got to be Mr. Jefferson Health Training Complex, or the Jeffplex, as it's been dubbed, I think, by Jimmy Kempsey. Maybe we'll go with that, Jeffplex.
What do you call it? Jeffplex?
Jeffplex.
I don't mind giving Jefferson a little plug because they are my healthcare provider nowadays.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, and I'm new to them. So
Jefferson Health Training Complex. So yeah, Jeffplex is not bad. Well done.
Maybe they'll give me a discount on my premium if I talk about them every day.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably not.
Give it a shot. Maybe I'll move over to Jefferson Health. Who knows? But who would be? I think it's Mr. It could be, if you're really old like me, it could be Mr. Westchester. But anyway, Mr. Jetplex. The winner is Josh Weiroo.
Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot, actually.
Josh Weiroo has been. He has convinced everybody except me that he should be a part of this team. So he is the definition of
Do you think that's going to be a big difference between you and your beat guys on the roster?
I think 90% of them are going to put him on the roster. I am not.
Wow.
We'll see. I mean, I could be wrong and they could be right.
And you're going to hold firm and not do it.
I'm not very disciplined. They can't. Well, you can do anything you want, but I can't waste 2 roster spots.
They'd have to make him what, the 6th edge, right?
Yeah. I can't waste 2 roster spots. I don't care about 1 because they've talked me into it with Mailata, but you can't tell me you're gonna stack 2 guys on the back end of the roster because you're worried about somebody picking them up on waivers. And they're not ready to play, and and they're both on defense. I'll tell you, Bick ain't playing them. So I'm trying to keep the blinders on, but it's Howie's decision, and certainly those people who are going to put him on there could be right. He's played well. I'm not trying to downplay him. Certainly for his experience level, he's done a tremendous job, and they want to work with him and they want to keep him. But I think you can get him through waivers. But we'll see. Josh Weiroo is your Mr. Jetplex.
All right.
2026.
All right, there it is. All right, John, that's our camp awards ceremony here on Birds 365 for the 2026 Eagles training camp. All right.
I also did. I used to do
more. Nice.
I used to do biggest tweak, my favorite tweak. Now the one year it was awesome because I called it Balcony Vic. They put Vic up in the balcony then it was the NovaCare complex when they had these operational practices, and they were practicing communication. So usually they're more boring. This year it would be the call it periods to get Sean Mannion ready, which is different. Usually you script practice and everybody's on board with what you're doing, but they made it, sort of pop quizzes, for lack of a better term, for Sean Mannion to try to get him ready for the heat of a game as much as you can, which you can't really do, but as much as you can. So that's your favorite tweak of training camp.
Yep. All right. Good stuff. I like that one too. All right. One more to add to this segment because I think it goes kind of with the awards. Kyle Studer checks in. What's up, Kyle? 3 Eagles players with the highest ceiling. Good question.
Well, I mean, that's almost got to be young players because, guys who are, all pros or all pro level players like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, they might still go up. I presume you're looking for players who haven't reached that level. And it hasn't been a great year, at least early on, for the draft. Long time before you can make that. But just from guys that I've seen, yeah, Markel Bell would have the biggest ceiling. Then I would say Eli Stowers is 2 and Mekhi Lemon is 3. So sort of inverse of the draft. Like if Markel hits his ceiling, he could be a big time player. If Eli Stowers hits his ceiling, he could be a big time receiving tight end in this league. If Kai Lemon hits his ceiling, he could be an above average inside receiver, in my opinion.
You still do believe in the upside of Stowers?
Yeah, like I said, if he learns the position and it slows down for him, then I think the athleticism shows up. Right now, he's swimming. He doesn't know. He doesn't know the position. I think the biggest misevaluation with Eli Stowers, and not only from the Eagles but from the rest of the league, who had him as some of the draft hype had him as a potential late first round pick after the combine. So this is more than the Eagles. I think the miss in the evaluation is just how limited his experience is playing tight end, as a longtime quarterback and making that transition. He should have been a day 3 pick. It's just from the developmental aspect of learning the position. But if you're patient and you teach him the position and then he gets comfortable with it, and then the athleticism will take over. So I think the ceiling is still very high, but he was clearly overdrafted because he's not ready from a technical, fundamental, mental standpoint to play tight end in the NFL. And he's also a very smart kid. So he's got the aptitude to learn it, but he needs time to learn it.
Well, we'll see how he continues to develop.
And none of them, by the way, will be Quinyon Mitchell or Jalen Carter.
No, I think that's true. Here's John follows up and he says, chosen one, John, not to be confused with John McMullen, says, Cole Young is about to put on a clinic. He is itching.
There was some evidently preseason football last night. A couple guys went off. Dylan Gabriel went off. So I guess it's possible. Another lefty, by the way. Cleveland might be the only team that has 3 backup quarterbacks better than their starting quarterback. I'm joking, they don't, but
would I be crazy to say I'd rather have Cole Payton out there than J.J. McCarthy?
Yes. Yes.
I was testing how much you dislike J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, he's not that. Don't be surprised. It could be Anthony Richardson. It could be J.J. McCarthy. Eagles have a lot of ego when it comes to quarterbacks. And they may look at a kid who's got a good template from a skill set standpoint and say, we can fix him. Because something's going on at backup quarterback. Nothing they are doing is making sense. Unless you believe that Andy Dalton's the backup, and that's it. which not a lot of people believe.
Yeah, right. John, for the game tonight, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Good segment there on the awards, by the way. I want to thank everybody for being here today. A good